Okay guys, welcome back. It's time to jump in the Vassago. Right now the Vassago is the most popular faction carrier. It has a very nice bonus on both turrets and missiles. It is quite fast for a capital ship, its speed is comparable to battleships, and overall it has a bonus on both shield and armor, so it is a very unique ship. Now the relevant skills for this ship are going to be the lightweight ship skills, which I have maxed out. Besides the lightweight ship skills, you want to have the capital skills, you want to have the versatile assault ship skills leveled up as well. Team combat is also very important. The defense module has been significantly improved with the skills, and now it's actually one of the best modules in the game. And since this ship can do both a shield or armor tank, shield operation and armor operation skills are going to be very important. So if you have good shield skills, go with the shield tank. If you have good armor skills, go with the armor tank. Again, the Vassago can do both, although don't combine, don't do a cursed hybrid tank. Always pick one tank type, either shield or armor. Now let me quickly just scroll through the basic info of the ship. So this is a angel ship, and they're known for their speed and agility, although they're also known for their DPS. So plus 10% lightweight ship turret damage, plus 10% lightweight ship rocket damage per skill level, so you get the best of both worlds. Basically you can combine the lightweight ships based on the need, and you get the damage control and warp acceleration speed from the skills as well. 1 million hit points, about the same as the previous ships, not as tanky as the Astarte or not as tanky as the Anaconda, but the Astarte has the best DPS, and currently I have 8415.92 DPS. I have 3 bombers and 1 destroyer. In the low slots, triple adaptives, 1 reactive, damage control, large capital capacitor battery, and dual capital boosters. This is the DPS rig, DPS build, and these are the DPS rigs. When the damage mod gets available next week, I will be doing a full-on DPS glass build for these ships, and I'll be pushing their DPS to the limit. Now you have 2 options for implants: bomber tactics if you are a shield tank, or if you want DPS, or if you are a armor tank, you can do the bomber tactics, or you can go with the thermal circulation. Both work. As for the general units, if you have an armor tank, go with the armor units. If you have a shield tank, go with the shield units. There is no general unit for the new combat module for the versatile assault ships, so I guess they will be releasing that next. And so far I have been really accurate in terms of the modules that will be released, so yeah, probably going to have some new general units for the damage mod that you can use on these ships. But overall, perhaps the other units work, because the fire module, the DPS mod for the lightweight ships, is a combination of all the other damage mods, so there's a chance that the general units will work. I'll test that out when the module is available next week. Right now the module is not available, so I can't do the DPS setup. And yeah, you might wonder, why did I dock? Well, of course, I forget fuel. Fuel is very important for these ships. Always make sure that you have enough fuel when you undock. Don't repeat my mistakes here. I lose a lot of time when I forget the fuel, and now I have to find a ship that has fuel so that I can borrow that. I usually use plasmoids. That's the most widespread source of fuel right now. Refueled, and now the boat is ready for action. Let's undock and let me show you the active stats of the Vassago. Now, the same rule applies to the ship as well. The DPS of the ship has been literally doubled. The DPS on all of the faction carriers has been doubled. Their tank has also been significantly improved. My Revelation has about 660,000 armor. The Vassago has 771,000 armor hit points. So yeah, they are indeed much tankier than the. On paper, they have much more hit points than the Dreadnoughts, although the Dreadnoughts have much better repair capabilities, and they are much tankier. Although on paper, when you take a look at the stats, you might be thinking that the faction carriers are much more tanky. In a way, that's actually true. But when they start taking damage, it's easier to kill these ships than to kill a Dreadnought that's built for tanking. 4.9 million hit points, 79, 85, and 87% resistance, 771,000 shield hit points. Now, with the defense mode active, 10,385.39 DPS, 6.3 million hit points, 83, 85, 88, and 90% resistance, which is pretty good. And we have the damage control. This ship has a bonus on the damage control, so extra 3 seconds on the activation time. 94, 95, 96, and 97, 18.7 million hit points. This is with the DPS build, with the DPS rigs. Later I will show you the tank build, the crazy tank build that I like to do. Now let me strip the ship from all modules, because I want to see the DPS with the destroyers. Now, the bombers with the bomber fleet will have much higher paper DPS, although the turret lightweight ships have been massively buffed in the last update. So now I have the theory that the turret ships are better than the missile lightweight ships, and in this video later, when I go into combat, I will take the bombers in action, the missile ships, and I will take the turret ships in action, and then we will see how both perform. I still have to do the same thing with the other 3 carriers, and I think I will do that when the new DPS module is available, because then I can actually push their DPS to the limit, and then we can calculate the time, and I can compare the clear times on all of these ships. 7,368.7 DPS, which is a little bit lower, although still the DPS is really good. Now, someone asked me to try and mix the lightweight ships. All of their DPS is about the same. All of the lightweight ships do about the same DPS. So no matter what lightweight ship you put, it can be a Corax, it can be a Thrasher, it can be anything. The stars all have about the same DPS. They only have different damage types. Some of them have high kinetic, some of them have high EM, thermal, and explosive, while the missile ships overall do about the same damage, although in some cases the same rule can be applied. Actually, I think the same rule applies to the bombers. They all have unique damage types, but they all do about the same damage. Just some of them have higher thermal, some of them have higher EM, some of them have higher kinetic damage. Okay, let me put back the previous hangar modification rig, and now I will put back the bomber fleet. Again, both are still a very good and valid option. It really depends on what your ship has to do. The bombers are good against big ships, while the destroyers are generally good against everything, but the bombers in theory should do much more damage to the big ships. Let me quickly just add all of these ships so that I can match the same layout as before. Perfect, okay. Now, like I mentioned before, you can also do a armor tank, and this is how the Vassago would look if you were to have a armor tank on the ship. Now, this is basically one of the default builds that you can run on these ships. The armor repairs have much better capacitor runtime, because the armor repairs are not using as much capacitor as the shield boosters. And with this build you can go and add the thermal circulation implants for the extra 20% armor resistance. And now the Vassago should be quite tanky, although you lose the DPS from the drone bomb implant, but you get extra tank. And from my personal experience, on the big ships, extra tank is usually the better option. Having high DPS is nice, but that DPS is a little bit pointless if the ship dies in 5 seconds. So I prefer to have tank over DPS on most of my ships. 4.8 million hit points, 87, 83, 80 and 76% resistance. With the defense module active, the tank is 6.2 million, 90, 87, 85 and 82% resistance. And we have the damage control. With the damage control, 18.4 million hit points, 97, 96, 95 and 94% resistance. A little bit lower than the shield tank, but that is to be expected. And this is with the thermal circulation implant active, so yeah, very interesting
docking request
result.
Accepted.
Okay, let me dock and let me change the build again. If you prefer to use the ship's effect on the plates, you can do something like this. With dual adaptives, dual plates, dual armor repairs, you get a lot of armor. Now I have over 1 million in armor. And again, the thermal circulation implant is going to be your friend with a build like this, focused on armor repair. I also have the armor plate unit to increase the armor volume per armor plate by 23%. And let's undock to show you the active stats of the ship. Although I'm not really a big fan of a build like this, because I feel like the ship is quite fragile. Not really sure why I have that feeling, since it still has over 4.7 million hit points and still has good stats, but I don't really feel that it's really the way to go with a build like this. So I'm very interested in what you think about combining armor plates with armor repairs. I personally don't really like something like this. The extra armor volume is nice, but those armor repairs or those plates could be extra tank, and I'm a pilot who prefers to have more resistance over armor volume, although there's a build that I also like, that can give you some very nice armor resistance, and it can give you crazy armor volume, and I'll do that build in this video as well for both shield and armor. Although the DPS on the Vassago so far is the highest out of the 4 faction carriers, that's because of the bonus that this ship has for the lightweight ships. It's the same bonus on both turrets and missiles. Okay, let's go to the bombard tactic. Now the DPS with the bombard tactic, well, you can add like 300% extra DPS, and with the damage mods that also can add the DPS by another, let's say, 50-60%. So we're looking at a potential 360% damage increase when everything kicks in. So that's about, I don't know, like 45,000 DPS or something, about that number. Will be fun to check out the numbers when I do the DPS build, but you can get some pretty scary DPS out of these ships. Rough estimates, 46, 47 up to 50,000 DPS easily, perhaps even above. Again, it depends on what type of lightweight ships you use. If you use the more expensive ones, then your DPS will probably be about 50,000. Might even go to 70,000 DPS. Again, depends on the build and on the modules, but yeah, we're looking at some very nice DPS on the faction carriers. And this is the exact same build with the extenders. Again, I'm not really a big fan of a build like this, so you tell me what you think about a build that combines shield boosters and extenders, armor plates or shield extenders, depends on the type of tank that you like to do. Again, never combine shield and armor on the same ship, that's not good, and whoever tells you that you should combine armor and shield on the same ship is not a very friendly path. So yeah, always pick either shield or armor, never both at the same time. And now, as promised, the crazy build. So this is a build that I generally like, a build that works on most shield tanks for maximum possible shield repair and maximum possible armor resistance. My apologies, maximum possible shield resistance, since this is the shield tank. And let's undock and let's check out the tank. This is a tank build. I would probably use something like this on my own ship because I usually go with the crazy tanks. My Revelation has a crazy tank that is getting me reported, by the way. Imagine having a ship so tanky that people think you cheat and they go and report you. That's basically what's happening. You built the ship so well, it feels like hacking. It's hilarious. And I actually like how the tank looks now. This thing has some very nice resistance and 31.4 million hit points, 97, 97, 98 and 98%. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the current layout on this ship. This looks nice. The DPS is a little bit lower, but you get still a very nice DPS, and the DPS is still double from what it used to be with the same build, which is again very nice and a very good thing because the skills kick in and you get that double DPS from the skills themselves. So you don't have to worry about the DPS if you go with a build like this. Even if you don't have the drone bombs, the DPS is still okay. The drone bombs will just make it even more lethal, although you don't really have to go with the implants. 11.5 million hit points, 88, 90, 91 and 93. Now it's 15.1 million, 91, 92, 93 and 94%, okay. And this is with the passive chunk build with full-on resistance and triple extenders. It has a lot of shield, so a build like this, whether it be armor or shield tank, is going to be very good in a fleet, but it is required that you have a lot of skilled logi pallets that will repair your ship, and always be prepared to be the primary target because the ships are juicy and everyone wants to shoot at them. And 44.8 million hit points with the damage control active. Not bad. 97 and 98% resistance. Yeah, the panic mode is good, and in theory the ship can be fully repaired from low shield to full shield during the duration of the damage control if you have good force auxiliary pilots at your side. That's why the damage control is going to be so useful. And now the same build with the armor tank. This time I have the thermal circulation implant active for the extra armor resistance. The exact same build works on the Astarte, the exact same build works on the villain as well. Both ships will be having about 1.5 million in armor hit points, and they will have some pretty scary armor resistance to go along with that. Again, a build that will work really well if you are in a fleet, a build that should not be used unless you have a bunch of force auxiliary pallets at your side to repair your ship. Because remember, a passive tank cannot repair itself. It can be tanky, but eventually it will die. It will be a very slow death, but eventually it will go down. So that's why it's required to have the force auxiliary pallets at your side. But yeah, 41 million hit points, 41.7, a little bit lower than the shield, which is weird, but still some crazy tank and some crazy stats out of this thing. I'm pretty happy with the Vassago. It's a very interesting ship. Okay, now I swapped back the modules a bit. I swapped back the rigs, and now let's go and see the performance on the ship. So currently I have the bomber fleet. This is a DPS setup, and I have the build that I don't like, with the extenders and boosters at the same
Warp
time.
drive active.
Now this is a 6 million ISK advanced experimental field mission. The previous mission that I was doing with the previous faction carriers was the 5 million ISK one, so this is a little bit different. I expect this mission to be a little bit more serious, and it probably will take a little bit longer to complete, so not really comparable with the clear time on the previous faction carriers, because the mission is not the same. So my duty is to inform you that it's not the same mission, although it looks to be the same, but it's not. The more expensive one is technically a bit more dangerous. Well, dangerous. Nothing is dangerous if you fly these things. Now, one thing that you should never forget is to adjust the lightweight ship orbit or the drone orbit. I forgot to do that, and if you have the wrong orbit, your lightweight ships are not going to hit. So let me pull them back. I wasted some seconds there. Optimal 10.4 for the bombers, and with the story it's 18.8. Now this is where I think I will encounter a small problem, because the optimal range on the lightweight ships is different, and you always should try to add the lightweight ships that have about the same optimal range. You don't want to have one lightweight ship fleet close range and the other long range. That way you can't use both, you can't give both of them separate orbits. All of these ships are running with the same orbit that you set, so that's a little weird, and I wish that you could set a individual orbit for every lightweight ship fleet. So keep that in mind. Make sure that your lightweight ships have about the same optimal range, or well, you might encounter some DPS issues. One of the lightweight ship fleets that you have, one of the lightweight ship squads will not apply their damage to the target, and in my case, well, the Thrasher is probably not going to do its full DPS, because it will orbit a little bit closer, although it should still be good because the accuracy follow-up is at 2 something kilometers, so technically I should still apply the damage that's necessary. It should have the necessary tracking and range to do its DPS, but just make sure that your optimal range on the lightweight ships is roughly the same, just so that you can prevent unnecessary DPS loss, and just so that all of your ships can actually do its full potential. Now those bombers are doing some silly DPS. That wasn't the case before the patch. So I think that they have done something to the bombers, because only bombers are behaving in a funky way lately. The other missile destroyers were working really well, but the bombers sometimes know to do little damage for some reason, and I think that's because of not because of the orbit, but the low damage occurs each time I use the secondary attribute of the implant, which increases their speed by 200%. So I guess that they are unable to apply their DPS because of their speed. Basically, it looks like for some reason the missiles have tracking. So if the bombers are moving very quickly, they might not apply their full DPS. So keep an eye on that. One of the things that did not happen before the patch, the bombers used to yeet the targets, but now the bombers are working a little bit differently, and I'm not really sure if I like that, because I felt like, actually, at the time I didn't really know what to think, to be honest, because the missiles were just outperforming the turrets, and if anything, the turrets had issues with tracking when I activate the secondary attribute of the implant. So I guess the roles have been switched, literally. Now the missiles have that issue with the speed, and as you can see, yeah, the bombers do 1 damage. Okay, well, yes, I will not be using the secondary attribute of the implant. Well, I think that alone is going to make the turret lightweight ships a better option than the missile ones, at least when we're talking about the bombers. The destroyer missile lightweight ships did not have that problem. They applied their damage really well, so I think this might be an issue only with bombers. So while you have the highest DPS with the bombers, the applied DPS and the clear time will probably be lower than the clear time that you would have with the missile destroyers or turret destroyers. So let me slowly align myself towards the station, because as promised, I'll be swapping the build and I'll be returning back to this mission with a different lightweight ship layout, because I'm very curious to know and to see the actual difference in practical use, because it's one thing to talk about something in theory, a whole different thing to actually, you know, test it out. And since I don't like to make some weird claims that I don't show or prove, I'll be doing some testing right now to see if I am wrong or if I am correct. Right now, I have that theory that turret lightweight ships will massively outperform the missile ones. So at least when we're comparing the bombers and the stars, that's also one important aspect to keep in mind. I'm comparing the bombers with the destroyers. The bombers currently with this setup have higher DPS than the star fleet that I'll be switching. So if they were applying all of their damage, in theory the bombers should be clearing much faster because they have much higher DPS. But if they don't do it their full DPS potential, then the actual DPS is lower than 10,000. I would say about 6,000, perhaps 7,000, so which puts them quite close to the star default DPS. So when I blow up the last 2 ships, I'll be going to the station. For some reason, like, just look at the damage that the bombers are doing. They're doing some good damage, but then they are not doing good damage. Some random 48, 0 they miss, 458 damage, 404 damage. It's ridiculous. It's like only 1 missile on the destroyer is impacting the target from like 6 or 7 that they have combined, which is weird, quite weird. And I think the bombers can't actually maintain the optimal range, so that the missiles don't reach the target. At least most of the missiles don't reach the target, and that gets counted as a miss. Okay, now back on the making the station. Let me swap the hangar modification. This one will give me extra destroyer slots. Okay, slapped in. And now let me load in the destroyer fleet. So could be that the orbit of 10.4 kilometers is not going to be optimal, but if I go lower than that, the Thrasher is not going to do any damage. So yeah, you really have to match the optimal range on the lightweight ships in order to be able to use them synchronized, because yeah, I think that layout did not work. Although I think I used the same build back the first time as well, and I did not have any issues, even with the manual orbit set at 10 kilometers. So something happened with the bombers. Something happened with the bombers. Doesn't mean that they're bad. I mean, maybe I'm messing something up, but I just set the optimal range that is recommended by the ship. I do that in PvP on the Stratus. I do that for all drone ships, so it should work the same way. But it should work really well. So just don't use any speed mods. The speed mod is what's messing up the damage on the bombers for some reason. And my theory, my guess is that they're orbiting so fast that they're actually orbiting outside of their optimal range, which means they don't have enough range with the missiles to reach the target. Only one missile out of the 3 or 4 that they have actually impact the target. That doesn't really explain the low damage, the 1 damage done, because if one missile does impact the target, then it should do enough damage for one missile, but it doesn't do that. It does 1 damage. So a very weird thing that's going on. But the star fleet, let me prepare. I forgot to change the orbit again. I reminded myself just in time. Okay, they're back in the ship. Set orbit at 18 kilometers. That's their optimal range. They have been launched, and 18.85 is the accuracy valve is actually 11 kilometers. Okay, so yeah, well, definitely not a good option to use with the bomber fleet, which has 10 kilometer range, 10 kilometer optimal range. And the first thing that I noticed, they do miss until they get in range. When they get in range, they start to unleash some very good DPS. The accuracy, well, I mean, let's just look at how they perform, and I mean, it will be quite obvious. I think it's quite obvious that the turret lightweight ships are so far doing a better job than the bombers. Just yeah, they're just popping everything. They are just popping everything on the grid. And this is the Thrasher fleet, not the Thrashers use turrets, projectile turrets. So the projectile turret skills are going to be impacting the performance. And I have maxed out skills here, so it is basically equal playing ground on all weapons and all lightweight ships. And based on what I see here, 9.7 thousand DPS build, okay. The stars are doing good damage, very good DPS, and it's mostly the damage output that they do is stable. Now you will see the occasional miss. That happens because the store is not within range, and when they are not in range, they will miss. That's to be expected. But once they get in range, and they're quite fast, once they get in range, their DPS will be applied to the target. And so far, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with their performance. Turret lightweight ships seem to be so far the way to go. At least when we compare them with the bombers that use missiles. The missile destroyers are also pretty good, and on the Vassago you can actually use both. I will compare them when I get the damage mod. Then I'll be doing destroyer versus destroyer, and then I'll be measuring the clear time. Now I'm thinking, when should I start the stopwatch? I think I'll start the stopwatch the moment the ship enters warp. Before warping, I will align myself so that the ship will instantly warp to the objective, so that the clear time will be as accurate as possible, so that I can show you guys a accurate result, because that's what I like to do. I like to give you accurate results that are not biased, because I know I know there's a lot of bias out there, and that bias is actually kind of ruining the experience for players who are looking for a good build, for players who are looking to see what works best for them. I know there's going to be a lot of... Actually, that's a topic for another time. Right now, let's just go to the Vassago. Well, it clears fast. I'll give this ship this. It clears this fast. Might very well be the faction carrier with the best clear time. I'll just make a guess right now. I guess, and I personally believe that the Vassago will be the first place in terms of clear time when I go and compare the faction carriers in terms of how fast they clear the mission. Will be, I'll try to do the exact same mission just so that I have accurate time. I mean, the destroyer just yeeted like 5 ships in a matter of seconds. They are performing really well so far. Now I have a question for you. Which one of these faction ships do you like the most? In my case, it will probably be the Astarte because it's a Blood Raider ship, and well, I love Blood Raiders by default. So of course, I'll say that that's my favorite ship. But I know that you guys have other faction carriers in mind. The most popular ones are the Astarte and the Vassago. The villain quickly behind, and the Anaconda is the least popular. Although I personally expected to see a lot more Anacondas out there because it adds literally the best DPS output because of the missiles. It outperformed most of them before this patch, so I'm a little bit surprised in that, but we have seen one Astarte go down. We have seen actually, my apologies, the first ever faction carrier that I have seen destroyed was a Anaconda that got killed by a blue tackle, just the way it would happen, as I said. The second one that I have seen was a Vassago, then a Astarte, and recently there was that X-type villain that got destroyed in a massive fight. So yeah, we have seen all of the new faction carriers destroyed, so yeah. The next thing to see destroyed would be faction Dreadnoughts. When will they be released? I have no clue and no idea, and probably no isk to even think about that, at least now. But in the longer run, I do plan to fly the Chemosh. The recent change on the capital neutralizers is fantastic, or well, or horrible. I guess it depends. It depends on the receiving end, because now the neutralizers on the capital ships are much more lethal and much more useful. There was little to no use for the neutralizers on capital ships, unless it was a capital versus capital fight, but with the change I started to use the neutralizers on my revelation, and now that ship is performing almost like it really does feel like I'm flying the Chemosh, because now I can just neutralize the capacitor of any target that I see. Like I showed on the video last time, one cycle is more than enough to kill the capacitor of a frigate. 1.5 cycle is more than enough to kill a capacitor of a cruiser. 6 cycles is enough for a battleship. 3 cycles is enough for a battlecruiser. And I have dual capital neutralizers on my ship, just so that I am able to quickly kill the capacitor of the average battlecruiser, of the average cruiser, or even the average frigate. Mostly there as defense, although can be used when a target jumps in and when we have to kill the capacitor of the target. One of the ways how to counter these very annoying voyage cores and glacier cores is to use the capital neutralizers, because they can use that speed boost all day, but they're not going to be able to use the micro warp drive or afterburner because they will have no capacitor. And since most of the pilots who run these cores panic in PvP, they usually don't look at their capacitor, they try to run away, and when they realize that their ship is not moving as fast as they wish to move, it is already too late, because they will be webbed and scrambled, and the revelation will slap them with the massive capital turrets. And this is going to make the Blood Raider capitals even more scary, although their Nosferatu neutralizer already had some fantastic performance because of the overall penalty. It doesn't matter what capacitor amount you have or your target has, the neutralizer or Nosferatu will work regardless. Also, one very important thing to note: so if you like to fly those ships, you can easily start to use the neutralizers. Now, for high angle ships, for high angle turrets and builds, one neutralizer would probably be more than enough, so that you can shut down the afterburner of your target. And then once they are slowed down, you can easily web them, and you can easily kill their ship without much of a problem. And that's one of the builds and ideas that I have for my own ship. And as you know, I apply my ideas. All the builds that I show you here are the builds that I would use, because I'm just a pilot like that. I like to show you the build that I recommend in action, and so far all the builds that I show you have been proven to work really well, because I have been using them in combat always, basically. And with that being said, the mission ends. That was a very, very smooth run indeed. Well, I guess time to dock, and the Vassago that definitely does work really well. Fantastic ship. If you want to fly one, then I would say go for it. It's a very fast ship, warps really quickly. It's very fast by default. It's like a battleship, capital battleship, I guess. Has, I would say, the best DPS out of all of the faction carriers that are currently available, and overall it can run both with a shield or armor tank, depends on what skills you have for this. But again, a very, very fun to fly ship, and I'm personally very happy with its
docking
performance.
request accepted.
So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.